Hi everyone, I have a big announcement. Our whole company is buzzing with excitement right now because one of our personal greatest authors, favorite authors, Neale Donald Walsch, is going to be producing a new quest with Mindvalley. Now I want to tell you why Neale is someone who is so special in my life. When I was in college in 1998, at a camping trip in Colorado, someone handed me Neale's book, Conversations with God, Book 1. That book radically changed my life. If you have been following me for years, you would have heard me speak about Conversations with God and the huge impact it had on so many ways of how I viewed myself, my role in the world, my spirituality. And Neale has been one of my favorite authors and a mentor for many, many, many years. Now what happened was last year in August 2016, I received an email from Neale, and it had a PDF attached. And he said, "Vishen, what do you think of this?" And so, I assume maybe he was asking me for feedback on a website or stuff, something like that, because a lot of authors ask me for that. And I happened to be flying to Ashland, Oregon to meet him. And so on the plane, I opened that PDF, and I was shocked to see that it wasn't a PDF. Neale had just written the 4th Conversations with God book after a 19-year gap. Book 1, 2, and 3 came out in the 90s. 19 years passed, and in August last year, a new book emerged, a new channeled work called Awaken the Species. And Neale said that what pushed him to create this work is the idea that humanity is on a tipping point, and there is an awakening that we are about to go through, that all of us can play a part of, to create one of the most incredible visions for the world that our children can inherit. I want you to listen to this piece by Neale as he tells you what we're going to be talking about this coming week on Mindvalley, and as you get invited to join a really beautiful, intimate masterclass with me and Neale Donald Walsch.
I'd like to begin, though, before we get into that, by just sharing with you a little bit about who I am, because you may be wondering, who is this person who's talking to me? My name is Neale, and I had an interesting experience about 25 years ago now, when I was around 50 years old or so. Everything in my life was falling apart at that point. My career had reached a dead end. My health was going rapidly downhill. My relationship with my significant other person was also collapsing, and so nothing in my life was working. And one night at 4:23 in the morning, I just woke up so angry about all of this that I just couldn't sleep anymore. I went out into the living room. I found a yellow legal pad on the coffee table in front of me, and I began writing a very angry letter to God. It didn't make any sense. Who writes a letter to God? But I just did it because it was what I was feeling. I was just getting my thoughts out. You know how it is when you just want to get rid of your negative energy. So I was writing this angry letter. Dear God, what does it take to make life work? What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? Somebody tell me the rules. I'll play. Just tell me the rules. Well, as I finished writing those angry questions, I heard a voice. I actually heard a voice in the room over my right shoulder. Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? I said, well, I am venting, but if you have answers, I'd sure like to know what they are. Of course, I was frightened when I first heard the voice because I turned around and there was no one there. And I thought, wow, great. Now I'm not just angry with God, angry with life, angry with myself. Now I'm losing my mind. I think there's somebody else in the room with me. But soon after I had that experience, I began to actually feel a presence. Could I call it a divine presence? A sense of being embraced. I was so overwhelmed by the experience that I began to actually weep with joy at the peace that I was experiencing for the first time in many, many weeks. So I stopped worrying. I stopped being angry. And I stopped the process of offloading all of this negative energy. I just sat there quietly. And suddenly, answers to all the questions I had written down started coming to me. So I wrote all the answers that I was receiving on the yellow legal pad. Now, here's what's interesting. As I was receiving these answers, and by the way, that voice then moved from outside of me, inside of my head. Sounded like a voiceless voice. It began to sound like the voice of my own thoughts. And as I began answering these questions, as you could imagine, other questions came up for me. Wait a minute, how can that be true? How can that be like that? I don't understand. And the more questions I asked, the more answers I received. Until before I knew it, I had a whole tablet full of questions and answers, questions and answers, questions and answers. That went on for many mornings. Each morning I was awakened at 4:23 in the morning. And for a very long time, I began this process of questions and answers until I had really a whole book full of material. I never thought of writing a book. I wasn't sitting there trying to write a book. I was having a very private process of personal journaling, you see. But at one point in the process, it said, this will one day become a book. And I thought, now I got you. Because that's something I can measure. Then I can know whether the experience I'm having is real or not. So I sent it off to just a small handful of publishers just to see what would happen. Just to see if it could validate what I thought I was experiencing, a conversation with God. I didn't think there was a chance in the world, of course. Nobody publishes a book by an unpublished author who claims to be talking to God. But in fact, one of those 5 publishers actually published the book. And it became an international bestseller. I'm not bragging about it, I'm just telling you what happened. The book began selling many, many copies. Ultimately, 15 million copies were sold of all the Conversations with God books and translated into 37 languages around the world. That first Conversations with God book wound up being on the New York Times bestseller list for over 2.5 years, and it became part of publishing history. So that's how I happen to be here, because I have been asked to share with you some of what I learned, some of what I experienced, some of what I was, can I put it this way, some of what I was given in the Conversations with God encounter. Specifically, 5 ways that we can tell whether we are fully awakened to who we are and to why we're here. This material comes direct from Book 4 in the Conversations with God series. That book was written in 2016, not very long ago, in the summer of 2016. After 19 years of no material coming through, a new dialogue began.